Look at the modern condition of a young man living entirely alone. He exists in a meticulously curated environment, surrounded by the quiet hum of a refrigerator and the distant, muffled sounds of traffic below. He is safe from physical harm, yet completely isolated in the dark. Isolation creates a specific psychological vacuum. When humans spend enough time disconnected from meaningful social friction, the brain begins to crave absolute certainty. We lose our internal compass and start desperately wanting someone, or something, to tell us exactly what to do, how to live, and how to avoid the anxiety of making the wrong choice. Into that deep, silent vulnerability, a phone suddenly rings late at night. He reaches into the dark and picks up the device. The caller ID glowing in the dark doesn't show an unknown number or a spam warning. It displays his own exact phone number. And when he answers, the voice on the other end sounds exactly like him, claiming to be calling from the future. Logical skepticism would demand hanging up, but the fantasy of a personal guardian angel, an omniscient version of yourself who has already navigated all your future mistakes, is intensely seductive. He stays on the line because he wants the voice to be real. The first instruction the voice delivers is highly specific. It tells him to leave his apartment 10 minutes early the next morning and to take a different route to work. By following that simple instruction, he avoids being caught in a sudden, brutal traffic accident that occurs at his exact usual intersection. The immediate terror of almost dying instantly metabolizes into profound, overwhelming relief. The caller has demonstrated both foresight and a willingness to intervene, transforming from a haunting mystery into a lifesaver. In a single morning, the voice earns absolute, unquestioning trust. This diagram outlines a process known in psychology as the compliance loop. A perceived threat is introduced, followed immediately by a given instruction to avoid it. When the subject obeys, they are rewarded with a manufactured feeling of false security. Each time the voice calls with a new warning, and he obeys, the cycle repeats. He avoids a bad date. He makes a lucrative minor investment. Every successful loop deepens his reliance on the calls, making him eager, even desperate, for the next instruction. The promise of perfect safety acts as the ultimate anesthetic. It disarms his critical thinking and serves as the perfect bait for total psychological capture. Once that reliance is cemented, the nature of the calls shifts. The voice stops offering gentle, protective guidance. Instead, it begins issuing mandatory prescriptions. The instructions target the architecture of his life. The voice demands he delete specific contacts from his phone. It orders him to destroy his childhood photographs, cut ties with his oldest friends, and entirely avoid the neighborhoods he grew up in. The caller is methodically severing him from his own history. When he hesitates to abandon a close friend, the consequence is immediate. That friend suffers a violent, unexplained accident, a shattered glass table, a sudden fall down a flight of stairs. The accidents are small, highly specific, and impossible to trace back to him. The voice takes credit for these accidents, weaponizing the young man's empathy. He realizes that disobedience doesn't put him in danger, it punishes the innocent people around him. To protect them, he must comply perfectly. He is now subjected to absolute coercive control. His own apartment, once a sanctuary from the noise of the city, functions as a digital cage where he awaits his next set of orders. Days blur into nights. The young man is entirely consumed by lived dread and profound exhaustion. He is paranoid, jumping at every shadow, terrified to sleep in case the phone rings. Defiance requires a blind spot you can exploit, but you cannot trick an entity that possesses your exact memories, your intimate thoughts, and your deepest psychological weaknesses. Every lie he considers telling, the voice has already anticipated. Through the static of the receiver, the voice's demeanor degrades. The calm, omniscient tone is gone, replaced by an aggressive, impatient snarl. It barks orders, furious at the slightest pause or question, berating him with a cruelty only a person's own inner critic could muster. Reduced to a hollow shell, he sits waiting in the dark. His entire physical existence is tethered to the harsh, cold glow of his device, terrified of the ringing, yet terrified of the silence. Because the captor knows everything he will do before he does it, the young man experiences the total paralysis of free will. He can no longer trust his own instincts, so he abandons them entirely. The breaking point arrives during a final late-night call. The young man stands paralyzed in front of his bathroom mirror, phone pressed hard to his ear, listening to the breathing on the other end of the line. This diagram illustrates the horrifying truth the voice finally reveals. It is not a benevolent future self calling back to save him. The caller is a variant from an alternate timeline, one who died prematurely, violently, and is now using the connection to find a way back into existence. Every demand to destroy photos, abandon friends, and alter his daily routines served a singular, hidden purpose. The voice was forcing the young man to replicate the dead variant's exact behavioral history. By aligning their lives through forced habit, the variant molded him into a psychologically compatible vessel for a hostile takeover. He meticulously followed every instruction to survive, and in doing so, he actively built his own coffin. He lowers the phone and stares into the glass. The reflection staring back breathes slightly out of sync with his own chest. The eyes hold a cold, unfamiliar certainty. He realizes the man in the mirror is no longer entirely him. This is the purest form of identity horror. The physical body remains intact, but the self is silently, willingly erased from the inside out. He traded his agency for the illusion of safety. He wanted someone else to carry the burden of his choices, and the universe provided a predator willing to take the entire load. It forces us to ask a quiet, terrifying question. If our identity is nothing more than the sum of the decisions we make, at what point does surrendering those choices mean we cease to exist entirely?